All right, welcome everybody. I'm Garry Adelman.
And I'm Kris White.
And we're both from the Civil War Trust. We're part of the Education Department, but we're not at a Civil War battlefield today. We are at a Revolutionary War, or War for American Independence battlefield. Kris, where are we?
We're on top of Kings Mountain. We're in South Carolina. This is a battle in the backcountry in October of 1780. We're going to talk about some of the Loyalists and some of the Patriots are going to fight up top.
I mean, the Rev War was fought in New York and fought in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, right? What are we doing down here?
Most people think that. That's where George Washington crossed the Delaware. That's where the battles of Trenton were. So here in the Southern campaign, this is the Southern theater of the war. Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. This is where the British will focus in the latter part of the American Revolution. Their idea is to try to subjugate the South. They want to seal it off from the rest of the colonies. They want to take advantage of the indigo, the rice, the cotton, get that commerce. So if they do have to sue for peace eventually, they'll own the South, and that'll be a better bargaining chip than owning the North. Because Britain, they can actually produce much of what is produced in the New England colonies. But down here in the South, with Charleston, the fourth largest city in the United States, and that important port, what are they going to do? They're going to try to get all that good trade, which is what the backbone of the British Empire is built upon in that 18th century sea trade.
Good. And I see that we are, in fact, live. I'm watching on my phone as well. This is our first YouTube live video, so thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you share it with your friends and you post it onto your other social media pages as we go. So this fight at Kings Mountain, I mean, these Rev War battles aren't like World War II battles or Civil War battles. What kind of fights are we talking about here?
This is actually, Kings Mountain is a civil war inside of a civil war. We are going to be on a smaller scale. We have about 1,200 Patriot forces. We have about 900 Loyalist forces. Those Loyalist forces are loyal to the Crown, King George III, and the Patriot forces are, of course, American forces that are not fighting under George Washington, but we can put them under that same umbrella. But up here at Kings Mountain, this is more of a backcountry fight. A man named Patrick Ferguson, a fiery Scotsman, 36 years old. He's a British regular. He is a very interesting guy. Reportedly is the best marksman in the entire British Army. He's so good that he created his own rifle, the Ferguson rifle, which is a breech-loading rifle, meaning that it's loaded from the rear, unlike most of the rifles at the time. They're loaded from the muzzle or the very end of the gun. Ferguson's going to put together this awesome gun. He's actually going to aim one of them, supposedly at George Washington in 1777 at the Battle of Brandywine, but doesn't pull the trigger. And Ferguson will be wounded at Brandywine and then eventually be sent here to the South, where he's supposed to gather up militia forces for the Crown. And he does a pretty good job of it. He's raising together some guys down here into South Carolina and North Carolina who are coming to the cause.
Yeah, this is really cool. I mean, because, you've got, Americans fighting Americans here. Like you said, it's a little civil war going on here. And so when the battle actually happens on Kings Mountain, October 7th?
Yeah, 1780.
1780. I mean, you're going to have all sorts of, watch, our cameraman's going to fall off the edge of this path here. You're really having an interesting situation. So just to summarize, right, if I'm correct, you've got Ferguson up here. He's got 900 soldiers or so. They're all Americans. He's the only British soldier on the hill, on the mountain, right?
Yeah, Ferguson's the only Brit. He's a major. He used to fight with the 71st Regiment of Foot, Scott Regiment. Fantastically dressed men. They play bagpipes going into battle at times. At Calvin's a few months later, the 71st goes into action, playing those bagpipes. But what Ferguson is to do is to bring Loyalist forces out of the woodwork, make them into a viable army. The British Army has not done this earlier in the war. Why? Because this is a small uprising. We want to bring everyone back together. We have the best army, the best navy. We don't need these Loyalist forces. Then the war drags on, and it drags on. And now we might just need those Loyalist forces. We spent about 160 million pounds on this war so far, so we're going into debt. What's one way of cutting down our cost of shipping men across the ocean? Raise them right here in America. And that's what Ferguson's job's to do.
But for everyone that they raised for the Loyalist cause, for the British cause here in the Carolinas and this general area, 3 American citizens are going to rise up and fight with the Patriots, fight for American independence. And I think Ferguson is going to wake up to that idea when he's up here with a pretty strong force, almost 1,000 soldiers, but there's more than that coming toward him, right?
Yeah, Ferguson is up here on Kings Mountain in October of 1780 because he had really riled up the backcountry. He told folks that they needed to stop being, well, for lack of a better term, as he used it, pissed on out by these Patriot forces.
You heard it on YouTube Live.
These are terrible guys. He used it. These are terrible guys, he's going to tell them. And if they won't join the Loyalist cause, what we're going to do is come out with fire, and we're going to come out with a sword, and we're going to destroy your homes. We're going to threaten your families, your children, all these men. And that doesn't sit well with these backcountry folks, mainly Scots-Irish, who have settled over what's the Blue Ridge Mountains, over into what's Tennessee today, and the Watauga Valley, out near the Watauga River. These guys hear Ferguson talking this big game, threatening their families, and they start to rally. Men come from as far away as Virginia and Georgia, and they start rallying towards Kings Mountain, riding on horseback, not in uniforms, hunting shirts, using those long rifles as they start to arrive in this vicinity in early October of 1780.
I don't know if you all believe in karma, but this is going to play something in the fate of Patrick Ferguson. So let's really get into this here as we approach where something toward this end happens. So eventually you're going to have the Patriot forces encircle Kings Mountain. It's a thin apex up top. It's a long and thin mountain like this. And in this fashion, on top of the mountain, Ferguson will establish his Loyalist forces, sort of like this, and only to have the Americans come up and totally surround them. But they have sort of, they're not as well trained troops. Their rifles fire, very accurately, but not quite as quickly as Ferguson's. Ferguson's got, strong, thick, lengthy 17-inch bayonets on the end of his guns, and he can keep on repelling some of the Patriot charges. And they charge once, they charge twice. You're looking at a map over here. Things don't look so good for Ferguson, but he manages to hold on for the first half hour, the first 45 minutes. But somehow the Patriots manage to have the fortitude to what?
They keep pushing up towards these Loyalist troops who will be in formations, shoulder to shoulder, close formations, as Garry said, with those bayonets on. So how do we drive these guys back down the mountain? We charge them. We come down with this bayonet charge, which will break up your cohesion, and it will also force you to go back up the mountain, then down the mountain. 3 times they do this. But the American forces are fighting a more of what they called an Indian style. They're behind the rocks, they're behind the trees. One officer told his men, "You be your own officers." And they will duck, dodge, and come up this hill. And anytime the Brits try to pick one off, it's very hard to do. They have smoothbore muskets. They're not rifled. They're not as accurate. And these long rifles are going to pick these men off on the top of this hill. They're not on the right crest. They're on the top of the hill, not the military crest. And they make open targets.
Yeah, a couple of points. First of all, I think you almost quoted the movie Dodgeball there,
yeah.
With the duck, dive, dodge, duck and dive, or something like that. Secondly, this is not just any mountain that had happened at some place. It was here. This is an important point. This is the Kings Mountain National Military Park, one of a few national military parks around here and at Cowpens and at 96 as well. This is where it happened. You want to see the conundrum and the quandary that Ferguson's men were in, or what Campbell's Patriot militia soldiers had to go up? It was right here. They were on this crest here, they were here, and it is in this area that you're going to have Ferguson kind of charge to try to get his men out when he found his men surrounded. But let's tie up the fight first. What really happens? What's the end? Sorry to spoil the end of Ferguson's unit up here.
Well, Ferguson's men are up here. 122 of them are wearing red. The rest of them are up here just wearing long hunting shirts. They have hats. You know you're a Loyalist, you have a sprig of evergreen in your hat. And if you were an American force or a Patriot force, you'd have a piece of paper. So that's how they're telling each other apart. They're dressed almost identical. You had to look at each other's hats. Ferguson, riding behind his battle line. He's using a whistle because his one arm is hurt from the Battle of Brandywine, and he has to carry his sword in the left hand, is whistling commands to his men using a silver whistle. And he sees a flag go up, a flag of truce along his own line, and he rides over and knocks that down. He sees another one go up, and he knocks that down. He tries to rally his men, but a lot of his men are disheartened. They're surrounded. They're being picked off one by one. And Ferguson decides to lead a desperate charge himself out of here. He gets a handful of men and 2 officers and charges towards the American lines. As he does so, he is going to be shot at by at least 9 men. He's hit 7 times. He falls from his horse, but his foot gets caught in his horse's saddle. One of his men stops the horse. They get his foot out from under there. His arms are broken. He's bruised. His body is shot to pieces. And Patrick Ferguson, very close to where this marker stands here on top of Kings Mountain, and one of the monuments to Patrick Ferguson, will die on the battlefield here at Kings Mountain. He's in a flannel shirt. You see here, this would have been either a duster or a long shirt that he was wearing at the time. This is how the Americans knew what he was dressed like, and they knew that it was Patrick Ferguson. because there are a couple different accounts. They talked to either one of his mistresses, they talked to a person that they captured, or they talked to a local girl. All of them allegedly told them what Patrick Ferguson was wearing. So these American marksmen who could pick off a man at about 300 yards with their rifles are going to pick off Ferguson with at least 7 shots.
And this is cool. This is the first Civil War Trust YouTube Live. Thanks for joining us. I see there are 11 of you on there now. Let's keep growing that. Share this, tell other people about it, and we'll keep holding more YouTube Lives in addition to our Facebook Lives and our pondered Instagram Lives. We're at Kings Mountain National Military Park. We're just about to tie things up. So real quick, so this is a huge victory for the Patriot soldiers who really needed a victory at this point. But before we get into the meaning of that victory real quick, you're going to have Patrick Ferguson. He is killed here. If we were to go down the hill a little bit, you might be able to see a pile of rocks down there, as well as another monument where even American Patriot soldiers are paying respect to this very well-known commander. But, his end wasn't so pretty at the time, was it, Kris?
No, Ferguson's body, he's talked a big game. He's threatened these men's homes and their families. What are they going to do? They're going to strip his body. They're going to take everything off of him, and then they're going to urinate on him. So, talking about being pissed on earlier, he's literally pissed on by these men on top of the mountain, sadly.
Yeah. And I actually think we got 5 more people just out of that. So I think that's the kind of language we need to use in order to get more. So, sorry. Again, thanks for watching. We're at Kings Mountain National Military Park. And Kris, lastly, so what did this victory mean? I mean, were things already going well for the Patriots? Did they need this? Is this a turning point?
This is a huge turning point according to the British and the Patriot forces. They were losing much of the Carolinas, and now they have a great victory. They pushed Charles Cornwallis, who was the overall British commander here in the South, back down into South Carolina for at least a short time. Another victory will come a few months later, a place called Cowpens, under the command of Daniel Morgan, the old wagoner himself, held his feet bloody Bannister Tarleton. But going forward in the war, Henry Clinton, whenever this all ends, he's the overall commander of American forces here for the British. He's in command of all the British forces here in America. He's going to say that it's the first link in the chain that broke for the British here in the Americas. And this is where it all started. Because of the victory, no other loyalist wanted to rise up to help join the British cause.
And by the way, we are the Civil War Trust, but here we are on a Revolutionary War battlefield. That is because a couple of years ago we started saving battlefield lands, hallowed ground, from battlefields of the American Revolution and the War of 1812. America's first century is really what we're all about, even though we're called the Civil War Trust. So thank you for watching on our first YouTube live video here from Kings Mountain. Visit Kings Mountain. Come on out to Cowpens National Military Park or to 96 National Military Park. There's lots to see down here, and if not, join their Facebook pages. See what they got going on. I think Cowpens just celebrated commemorated an anniversary not long ago. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to the Kings Mountain National Military Park. Thanks to Kris for being our resident expert, and thank you again for watching.